Hunter Sung Jinwoo arrived at the funeral, dressed in a sleek black suit, his presence commanding attention as reporters scrambled to capture the moment. The funeral was held to honor the hunters who had lost their lives during the Jeju Island raid, a mission that had shaken the entire nation. This was Jinwoo's first official mission after being re-evaluated as an S-rank hunter, marking his public debut. The world had watched in awe as he single-handedly defeated the fearsome Ant King while his summoned army battled the unrelenting hordes of ants. The mission's success quickly became a nationwide event, with countless discussions flooding the internet about every detail. Sung Jinwoo's name was on everyone's lips, many praising his unmatched power and abilities. However, not all the attention was positive. Some critics voiced their belief that if Jinwoo had joined the raid earlier, more lives might have been spared. While many rallied in his defense, the lingering reality of the lives lost hung over the conversation. The weight of the criticism could not be ignored. Beneath a grey, clouded sky, Jinwoo stood in front of the memorial, his face etched with solemnity as he paid his respects to the fallen hunters. The air was thick with grief, and the white flowers laid at the memorial were a poignant reminder of the courage and sacrifice of those who had perished on Jeju Island. Mourners surrounded the memorial, their expressions heavy with sorrow as they gathered to honor the dead. Baek Yoonho, deeply emotional from the loss of his close friend Min Byung-gyu, approached Jinwoo. Baek had always held the belief that no single individual could end a war on their own. But witnessing the Jeju Island raid and how Jinwoo had single-handedly turned the tide of battle had made him rethink that notion. Despite the tragic losses, Baek acknowledged that Sung Jinwoo had brought an end to the nightmare on Jeju Island, a feat no one else could have achieved. In total, 4,801 hunters and 727 awakened civilians had joined the 5th Jeju Island raid. Many had perished, and though the victory was monumental, the heavy cost was inescapable. The death toll was grim, with 64 awakened beings and 32 civilians perishing in battle. Despite the loss, this final raid had the fewest casualties compared to the previous 4 attempts. A small but significant victory amidst the tragedy. Sung Jinwoo later sat down with President Go Gun-hee, the head of the Hunters Association, for a private conversation. The topic soon turned to Jinwoo's plans to form his own guild. As an S-rank hunter, Jinwoo didn't need to follow the usual steps to obtain a guildmaster's license. President Go explained that all it would take was a single phone call to the association, and they would handle the rest for him. Jinwoo took this in, contemplating whether starting a guild and exploring the benefits of his S-rank status would be the best next step. During their discussion, President Go mentioned a strange occurrence on Jeju Island. Soldiers and hunters had been dispatched to the island to clean up the remains of the ants and gather essence stones, but something unusual had happened. All of them had mysteriously lost consciousness while on the island. The affected individuals were A-rank and B-rank hunters, including members of the Knights Guild, but none of them could recall what had occurred before they blacked out. President Go speculated whether Jinwoo might have unknowingly cast a barrier or left some magic in place that caused the incident. Jinwoo, equally perplexed, clarified that he had done no such thing. President Go accepted his explanation, but remained puzzled by the event. With no memory to go on and no clear cause, the association had no way of determining if it had been a magic spell or some other force at work. Jinwoo wondered if it could have been a trap left by the ants, but the mystery remained unsolved. Their conversation was cut short when one of the association's employees approached, informing President Go that a guest had arrived earlier than expected. Apologizing to Jinwoo, President Go excused himself, thanking Jinwoo for his time. Jinwoo nodded in understanding and assured him there was no issue. As Jinwoo left the association building and made his way to his car, he was ready to move on to his next task. But just as he was about to depart, a voice called out to him from behind, halting him in his tracks. Turning around, Sung Jinwoo saw a man approaching him. The man introduced himself as Adam White, a senior official from the Federal Bureau of Hunters, FBH. This surprised Jinwoo as he had never interacted with the FBH before. Adam explained that it had been difficult to track Jinwoo down, even mentioning that he had stopped by Jinwoo's office earlier. This made Jinwoo recall a conversation with Jinho, where Jinho had mentioned that someone like Adam had left a visiting card. Curious, Jinwoo asked what the reason for the visit was. Adam revealed that he had important information to share, information that no other country or organization could provide except for the FBH. Jinwoo was skeptical, wondering why they would offer such valuable intel to him. Adam explained that the Bureau had a vested interest in sharing this knowledge with special individuals like Jinwoo. The recent Jeju Island raid had left a strong impression on the Bureau's deputy director, who had requested a personal meeting with Jinwoo to discuss matters further. Adam gestured to a car parked nearby and invited Jinwoo to come along and meet the deputy director. Jinwoo considered the offer, weighing the significance of the information Adam claimed to possess. As Jinwoo opened his own car door, he expressed doubts about the reliability of the Bureau's information, saying he would think it over and get back to them later. Before Jinwoo could leave, Adam mentioned something that piqued his interest, a term he had never heard before: an upgrader. Adam explained that an upgrader was an awakened individual who had the unique ability to enhance the powers of another awakened being. This immediately captured Jinwoo's attention, and after a moment's consideration, he decided to hear them out. He got into Adam's car, and they set off to meet the deputy director. Arriving at their destination, Adam announced their arrival. Inside, they were greeted by Michael Connor, the deputy director of the Federal Bureau of Hunters. Without wasting time, Connor introduced himself and presented Jinwoo with a stack of documents, immigration papers, sparking a deeper conversation that Jinwoo knew would change the course of his future dealings. The documents offered to Jinwoo, which usually took years to process, promised him instant American citizenship if he accepted. However, Jinwoo was far more interested in the information Adam had mentioned earlier, specifically about the upgrader. He asked about the possibility of enhancing an awakened being's abilities. Connor confirmed that such a person existed, and with a knowing grin, called for someone to enter. A middle-aged woman walked in, introduced as Norma Selner, the only individual in the world capable of enhancing the abilities of awakened beings. Jinwoo immediately sensed that she was unlike any other awakened being he had encountered. Miss Selner, noticing the skepticism in Jinwoo's eyes, began explaining her powers. She admitted that most people doubted her at first, but assured him that once they experienced her abilities, they would be convinced. She described how every awakened being had a natural limit to their strength, and unless they underwent a second awakening, they could never exceed these boundaries. Her power, however, allowed awakened beings to break through those limitations in 3 stages. Connor backed up her claims, explaining that Ms. Selner's powers required a lengthy recovery period, meaning she could only help 3 or 4 awakened individuals each year. Jinwoo found himself considering whether he might be one of those select few. If her abilities were real, they were extraordinary. When Jinwoo inquired about the effectiveness of the process, Ms. Selner elaborated that results varied from person to person, but after completing all 3 stages, an individual could experience a 20 to 30% increase in their strength. This revelation shocked Jinwoo. He now understood why a powerful hunter like Hwang Dong-soo had chosen to relocate to America despite the public backlash. The opportunity to gain such an advantage was something no hunter could easily ignore. Jinwoo also realized the potential dangers if word about Ms. Selner's powers got out. It could create chaos among hunters and governments alike. Connor, acknowledging this concern, explained that the Bureau had measures in place to ensure her safety while compensating her handsomely for her services. In exchange for her services, Ms. Selner enhanced the abilities of hunters chosen by the Bureau, and now they were offering this extraordinary gift to Sung Jinwoo. Recognizing his immense potential, the Bureau hoped her abilities would make an even greater impact on someone as powerful as him. As Jinwoo considered their offer, Connor assured him that As a bureau hunter, Jinwoo would receive top priority, preferential treatment, and assistance in securing the best contract with any guild he chose. Ms. Sellner emphasized that there was no pressure to decide immediately. They were simply introducing him to what they could provide. Still skeptical, Jinwoo questioned the idea of getting something for nothing. However, both Connor and Sellner reiterated that it was a goodwill gesture, a complimentary service with no hidden strings attached. Jinwoo recalled Sellner's earlier confidence, believing that he would be begging for more after experiencing her abilities. Norma Sellner gently grasped Jinwoo's wrist, smiling kindly as she beckoned him closer. She instructed him to look into her eyes as she began the first step of the process. Connor, watching the interaction, was pleased. He believed that once Jinwoo experienced the first stage, he would eagerly pursue the rest, and might even sign the paperwork on the spot. But something unexpected happened. As Norma stared into Jinwoo's eyes, she was suddenly enveloped in darkness. Panic set in as she searched desperately, seeing nothing until a shadow emerged. It approached, its presence terrifying as it opened its eyes and stared directly at her. Overcome with fear, Norma screamed and fell from her chair, trembling in terror at what she had seen. The two agents stationed near her immediately reacted, drawing their guns and pointing them at Jinwoo in a panic. Alarmed by their rash actions, Michael Connor quickly intervened, shouting for them to lower their weapons. He reminded them of who Jinwoo was, warning that if they had acted this way toward hunters like Thomas Andre or Liu Zhigong, they would already be dead. Realizing their mistake, the agents hurriedly holstered their weapons and rushed to assist the trembling Norma. Michael, bowing deeply, apologized profusely to Jinwoo for the agent's behavior. Though still processing what had just occurred, Jinwoo assured Michael that it was fine. Michael turned back to the agents, scolding them severely for their recklessness. The agents, clearly chastened, nodded fearfully, understanding the gravity of what could have transpired. As the situation calmed, Michael knelt beside the visibly shaken Norma Sellner, who was drenched in sweat and trembling. Concerned for her well-being, he asked if she was feeling unwell. Realizing the severity of her condition, Michael decided it would be best to reschedule the meeting with Sung Jinwoo. Jinwoo, intrigued by what had just transpired, agreed to leave, and Michael instructed Adam White to escort him out. After Jinwoo exited, Michael remained alone with Norma, desperate to understand the cause of the unsettling scene. He leaned in closer, his face full of concern, and asked her what had gone wrong. Still visibly shaken, Norma pressed her hand to her chest, struggling to catch her breath before she finally spoke. She revealed something astonishing. Jinwoo was no ordinary hunter. Norma described Jinwoo as a king, but not just any king, a being far more powerful than anything she had ever encountered. Michael's eyes widened in disbelief at her revelation. Could this mean Jinwoo was as strong as a national-level hunter? Michael pressed her for an answer. But Norma, still trembling, explained that it wasn't something as simple as raw strength. She admitted she had never experienced anything like it before. When she gazed into Jinwoo, something beyond him stared back at her. It wasn't Jinwoo himself, but rather an unfathomable darkness within him, an infinite, terrifying presence that had stared directly into her soul. The experience left her deeply unsettled. Before ending the conversation, she gave Michael one last critical piece of information. There was no limit to Jinwoo's power. Meanwhile, at the Hunter Association, Chairman Go Gun-hee sat alone, deeply troubled. He was reflecting on recent events, especially the tragic death of Hunter Min Byung-gyu during the Jeju Island raid. Though Min Byung-gyu had retired, his sacrifice weighed heavily on Go Gun-hee's heart. The realization that the future might bring even more sacrifices filled him with a growing sense of dread. As Go Gun-hee sat lost in thought, his phone rang, snapping him out of his reflection. When he answered, an urgent voice on the other end informed him that a B-rank gate had opened up in the middle of a busy road. Go Gun-hee's eyes widened in alarm. A B-rank gate wasn't something an ordinary hunter squad could handle, and it required immediate attention. He began considering which of the major guilds to call in, But then he remembered Hunter Sung Jinwoo had recently opened an office near the area. Meanwhile, Jinwoo was driving along a congested road, lost in thought. He was still trying to make sense of what had happened during his meeting with Norma Selner. He knew she had been terrified, but he couldn't quite grasp what exactly she had seen in him. As he pondered, his phone buzzed in his pocket. Glancing at the caller ID, he saw it was Go Gun-hee, chairman of the Hunter Association. Curious, Jinwoo answered the call. Gun-hee's voice was filled with urgency as he explained the situation. A B-rank gate had appeared on a main road, causing major traffic disruptions. He asked if Jinwoo could help by taking care of it. Surprised by the request, Jinwoo questioned whether he could intervene without the proper permissions. Go Gun-hee reassured Jinwoo with a light-hearted remark, reminding him that, as chairman of the Hunter Association, he had the authority to grant permission. Jinwoo couldn't help but smile at Gun-hee's playful tone. With the chairman's blessing, Jinwoo stepped out of the van, ready to handle the task at hand. Following the trail of manna, he approached the gate. Reporters had already gathered, their cameras flashing as police and association employees worked to cordon off the area. As Jinwoo neared the portal, a female employee stopped him, demanding to know what he was doing. But her demeanor quickly shifted when she recognized him as an S-rank hunter. Her surprise was apparent, and soon the crowd began to buzz with excitement, realizing Jinwoo was here to handle the situation. Still trying to enforce protocol, the employee reminded him that even as an S-rank, he couldn't just enter the gate without proper authorization and sufficient backup. Sensing that things were getting complicated, Jinwoo calmly made a call to Chairman Go Gun-hee. Handing the phone to the employee, Jinwoo told her to speak to someone she couldn't ignore, the chairman himself. Trembling slightly, the employee spoke with Gun-hee, and after a quick conversation, she gave Jinwoo the go-ahead to proceed. Without hesitation, Jinwoo entered the gate, disappearing from sight. Frustrated by how things had unfolded, the female employee muttered to herself, half-jokingly hoping Jinwoo might trip or hurt himself. But before she could dwell on the thought, screams erupted from the crowd. The once black surface of the gate had turned a chilling blood red. It was a red gate. Fear washed over the crowd as the terrifying sight spread panic, and the employee's heart sank. She wondered if her ill wishes had somehow triggered this disastrous change. A red gate meant the exit would remain sealed until the mission was completed, and anyone trapped inside would have to fight for survival. Inside the gate, Jinwoo felt the shift immediately. The heavy, oppressive atmosphere told him this was no ordinary gate. A red gate was a dangerous place where even the strongest hunters could meet their end. He knew he'd have to push himself harder than ever before to emerge victorious. His thoughts briefly wandered to a recent conversation with his mother. She had expressed her hopes for him, understanding that his awakening as an S-rank hunter had changed everything. She had reminded him of his father, who had once been a firefighter before becoming a hunter. Jinwoo's mother had fallen in love with his father after seeing him risk his life to save others, and she understood that Jinwoo had inherited that same sense of duty and courage. As he prepared himself for the battle ahead, those words echoed in his mind, fueling his resolve. He wasn't just fighting for survival. He was living up to the legacy of the man who had come before him. Jinwoo recalled his mother's warning, her gentle reminder to not push himself too hard and to stay cautious. Despite the dangerous path he had chosen, it was a relief knowing she didn't oppose his life as a hunter. Her words echoed in his mind as he readied himself for the battle ahead. "This won't be too much for me," he reassured himself. The battle erupted as Jinwoo's shadow soldiers charged forward, clashing with the swarming magic beasts. Amid the chaos, Jinwoo stood calmly, directing his shadow army with precision and purpose. His soldiers were powerful and relentless, tearing through the ranks of monsters like a well-oiled machine. For Jinwoo, the true challenge of being a hunter wasn't just slaying beasts. It was staying ahead, never allowing the roles to reverse. A hunter could become the hunted in an instant, and Jinwoo understood this harsh reality all too well. Yet he had no intention of stopping. He was not one to falter. With a cold, calculated gaze, he surveyed the battlefield. The first wave of enemies had been utterly crushed, but he knew the real challenge was yet to come. Determined to finish this job quickly, Jinwoo moved forward, ready for whatever lay ahead. Suddenly, the boss of the gate emerged, flanked by his elite guards. His presence radiated authority and confidence as he scanned the battlefield, searching for the intruder who had decimated his forces. The boss spoke, his voice filled with a mix of rage and grudging respect. He had noticed how far this small human had come, slaughtering his people with such ease. And what baffled him even more, this human spoke their language. But his confidence quickly turned into confusion. He called out for his remaining forces, expecting them to close in and surround the intruder. Yet, the only response was silence. The eerie stillness hung in the air, and the boss's eyes darted around in disbelief. He shouted again, demanding his forces appear. But there was nothing, just the oppressive quiet of an empty battlefield. What the boss didn't realize was that Jinwoo's shadow soldiers had already decimated his troops, leaving none to respond. The battlefield was already in Jinwoo's control. Amused by the situation, Jinwoo couldn't help but think to himself, "Small? Now that's funny." With a smirk, he commanded his shadow soldiers to reveal themselves, their forms rising ominously from the ground. The hunt was far from over, and Jinwoo was just getting started. One by one, the magic beasts fell, ambushed by Jinwoo's shadow soldiers who had been lying in wait. Their strikes were swift and precise, cutting down the beasts effortlessly. As Jinwoo surveyed the battlefield, he realized that none of the enemy forces remained. The boss of the magic beasts stood frozen in disbelief, unable to comprehend how his once mighty army had been annihilated. Desperation flickered in the boss's eyes as he rolled out his palm, summoning his hidden soldiers from the trees. The ground trembled as the trees broke apart, forming new beasts from their shattered trunks. But before these reinforcements could even take a single step, Beru, one of Jinwoo's most formidable shadow soldiers, moved with lethal precision, sniping off their heads one by one. Jinwoo and his shadow army advanced, their overwhelming presence impossible to ignore. The boss, now gripped by terror, found himself paralyzed, unable to utter a single word. The stark realization of his defeat washed over him as Jinwoo's forces pressed forward. Jinwoo gave the command, and his shadow soldiers surged into action. Leading the charge was Beru, the ant-like soldier whose power sent shockwaves through the battlefield. The remaining magic beasts, sensing the looming threat, lunged forward with all the ferocity they could muster. But they were no match for the shadow army. The battlefield descended into pure chaos as Jinwoo's forces ripped through their enemies with brutal efficiency. No mercy was shown, and the clash grew even more intense. Two towering centaur-like beasts, far more menacing than the rest, charged at Jinwoo with their weapons drawn. But before they could reach him, Tank, Jinwoo's fearsome shadow beast, intercepted them with crushing strength. With a single, violent motion, Tank tore the centaurs apart, adding to the growing carnage on the battlefield. The boss of the magic beasts, witnessing the utter destruction of his army, screamed in agony, calling out for his fallen comrades. His cries were met with silence. Beru, moving at lightning speed, rushed toward him. With a swift strike, Beru's sharp claws pierced through the boss's body. At the same moment, Igris appeared, slashing the boss's arm clean off with a graceful yet deadly motion. The boss collapsed to the ground, fluid pouring from his wounds as he howled in pain. Tusk, one of Jinwoo's powerful shadow mages, activated his skill, Hymn of Giants, growing to an enormous size. Then, using inverse gravity, Tusk slammed the already weakened boss into the ground with immense force. The impact shook the entire battlefield, leaving the boss broken and bleeding, unable to resist any longer. Jinwoo approached the fallen creature, his presence cold and commanding. He looked down at the barely conscious boss and demanded answers. His voice was calm, yet it carried the weight of authority. Jinwoo promised the boss that his suffering would be eased if he cooperated, but the magic beast remained silent, blood dripping from his mouth. With a sigh, Jinwoo suspected that the system was interfering once again, preventing the boss from speaking. "You've got nothing to say, huh?" Jinwoo thought to himself. "It must be the system blocking you. But I'll uncover the truth sooner or later." Jinwoo opened his inventory and, with a focused expression, pulled out a key. This was no ordinary key. It had come from the cursed random box he had received after defeating the demon monarch, King Borin, in the demon castle. Back then, the key had been a mystery, offering no information about its purpose, leaving Jinwoo confused. But now, after reflecting on his recent achievements, he recalled how things had changed. During the Jeju Island raid, he had reached level 100, a milestone that unlocked new details about the key. The system had finally revealed its purpose. The conditions had been met. The key unlocks the entrance to the Katanon Temple. It can be used at the designated gate. The location of the designated gate will be revealed after the allotted time passes. The name, Katanon Temple, rang in Jinwoo's mind, striking a deep sense of familiarity. As he connected the dots, memories flooded back. The double dungeon, the old temple at its end, the stone statues, the stone slate held by one of them. It all came rushing back with crystal clarity. The puzzle pieces were falling into place. Jinwoo realized that the system was guiding him back to where everything had started. The dungeon where he had first encountered the terrifying stone statues, the same place that had marked the beginning of his transformation as a hunter. And now, it was calling him once more. But this time, it felt different. If everything had been orchestrated from the very beginning, if the system had been waiting for him to return, Jinwoo knew he couldn't ignore it. This was a new challenge, and the stakes were higher than ever. With resolve burning in his eyes, Jinwoo made up his mind. The system had once again laid down a challenge, and he was more than ready to accept it. If this is the path set before me, then wait for me, Jinwoo thought, his determination solidifying. "I will be coming soon," he said, a steely resolve filling his voice. He was prepared for whatever awaited him at Katanon Temple.